Welcome to the Mulligan Stew podcast. I'm Terry David Mulligan. I have a special guest, special guest, because he's a friend. We have known each other a long time. His name is Rod Sexsmith. He's one of Canada's great treasures, singer, songwriter, human being, funny person. Even though I have yet to see a shot of him laughing, he makes others laugh with his comments and his posts. He's just released his 17th album. It's called the Vivian Line, which is a road that actually, from St. Catharines, where he moved, if you follow it back, hooks up with the main road freeway to Toronto. So it connects his old home, Toronto, with his new home in St. Catharines, which is a very rural, great for singing, songwriting. If you can stand the quiet, it's fantastic. Quiet's a beautiful thing. He's going to talk about his song. Actually, he's going to talk about himself a bit, about his songs, his profile, what people think, why he can, maybe can't get arrested in certain parts of the States, but is a bit of a singer, songwriter, folk hero in Europe and in Canada. He, as a songwriter, he says, I don't run away from cliches, I run to them. And I asked my friend Rod Sexsmith, when did music start to become important in your life? Like, I was thinking teenage years. And he said, no. Between ages 3, 4. His father left. There's another story. But when he left the house, he left his records behind. And his mom let him play those records. And he played everything in that collection, absolutely everything, and made his life less lonely. We're going to delve into that. There is one song, A Diamond Wave, which is, I think, one of the best on the album. And I said, where did that come from? Because you wrote that many years ago. He said, I was a courier, and I lost a package. And I went in to beg for my job because I was going to be fired. And I said, I told him it was my birthday, and please don't fire me. And then on the way home on the bus, he wrote Diamond Wave. It's just an incredible song. You're going to love it. He's going to talk about his favorite Rod Sexsmith song covers, which include Leslie Feist, Emmylou Harris. He actually says something quite remarkable. I do write songs that I may not be the right person to sing them. He's writing for Smokey Robinson or Bing Crosby, who hasn't been around since the 70s. He's going to explain all of this. It is a remarkable conversation. Do enjoy your time with Rod Sexsmith and listen to the music. Thank you. This is the Mulligan Stew podcast, and this is Mulligan Stew on the CKUA radio network, and it's the Terry David Mulligan YouTube channel. And I just went in there to have a look. There's stuff posted in there I can't even remember doing. How is that possible? I have the one and only Rod Sexsmith on the line. It's been a while.
Yeah.
But I follow you religiously. When you post, I see those posts come up. We're going to talk about the Vivian Line, if that's okay with you. And I know you're getting ready to hit the road. We'll be able to follow you. There'll be posts, and you'll do some stuff, and people review the concerts. And it's the continuation of a life you used to have.
Yeah, I mean, I toured a little bit last year and got my toe wet. But this tour, especially the American tour, I haven't played there since 2015, and it's kind of the most shows I've played in since before the pandemic. So, I went into it with a lot of kind of trepidation because I don't really do well in America. I do much better in the UK and these places, but the east side of the eastern states, we did quite well. I was pleasantly surprised. So I'm hoping I'll do okay on the west.
Do you have any theories on that? As you well know, there's been lots of heroes of ours, the Tragically Hip for one, Blue Rodeo for another, who have small pockets of fans in America, but not overall. What do you think, other than a hit, is the breakthrough in the U.S.? What do you have to do?
Well, I think in my case, when I came out, I got signed to a U.S. label, right? I was signed to Interscope, and people in Canada, I don't even think they even knew where I was from originally, And but I think for me, in my case, I didn't have the look or the sound. I came out at a time when, you know, it was Eddie Vedder and all that, and I didn't have that sound, that grungy sort of thing. And I just didn't know how. And also, I think I sing better now than I did when I came out. So maybe if I'd sung a little better, maybe I would have had a little more luck. But America's a tough nut to crack because there's so many little, like you say, pockets, you know. And I mean, you could be a huge country artist down in America that nobody knows you in New York City or something like that, you know. So it's kind of, you know. But I'm lucky that I have like a cult following, basically. You know, like I sold out Minneapolis and we sold out New York and Georgia and this and that. So there's about 6 or 7 or 8 cities where I think I do, you know, and I don't mean I'm playing huge places, but I mean, you know, where there's interest for me, which is kind of the true of Canada too. I mean, I don't, you know, I don't do that great here either, really.
Really? Truly?
You know, I mean, in Toronto, I could play maybe Massey Hall every now and then or something. Or a major city, but most of the time I'm playing small theaters or clubs still.
So here's the thing. Here's the thing, because you don't go around saying, "Hey, I'm Ron Sexsmith." I go around and say or play Ron Sexsmith. Listen up, and people pay attention. They really do, and they know you. They know your story, which is quite remarkable. You're not just a name on a marquee. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but. I keep seeing on press releases, I keep seeing the word beloved. And I'm not buying beloved. I'm not buying any of that stuff. You have to earn beloved.
Yeah.
And I believe this is your 17th album. Is that correct?
You're correct.
Right. So you've earned the beloved.
Well, thank you for saying that. I don't know. I mean, I think maybe in certain circles, I'd like to think that I've been around long enough that I'm sort of relatively established here, you know, at least, you know, they know, I don't know. I mean, they know my name and some records have done better than others. But, you know, I mean, it's weird because sometimes I'll see Jim Cuddy or something and they're huge in Canada, but not really anywhere else. Right.
Yep.
And I can get jealous sometimes of that I don't do as well in Canada. And I think he can sometimes get a little envious that they can't go to the UK like I can and play for, you know, so it's like a grass is greener kind of situation.
But Ron, you know, it's showbiz.
Yeah.
They bring a show. They bring, you are but a balladeer born for the lamps, right? They bring a show, the whole, and they all have their own solo albums that they can pull in. It's an event, and that's what you need. And what I don't understand is why it doesn't translate to the States. But let me ask you a 2-part question.
Yeah.
Wow, I knew this was going to be fun. Here's the deal. Did you watch the Grammys?
Yeah, I got to say we were flicking channels, so every now and then we'd land on the Grammys, and then we'd watch something. I saw some of the Grammys.
Did you see any of Bonnie's win?
Oh, my God, yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Okay. So, all of that show, all of that lipstick and feather and explosions and gender and whatever, there's Bonnie with a guitar, singing a Brothers Landreth song, and releasing an album, winning 3 Grammys. That was the big cheer for me. That gave me heart and hope. And here's the second part of the question. I did the Juno couch at CKUA in Edmonton, and we had friends sitting on the couch, and Cuddy was supposed to be there when he was playing hockey, but I got Tom Wilson, and I got Dan Mangan.
Oh yeah, Dan Mangan
to co-host with me, right? And we had Diggin' Roots, and we had all sorts of people show up. We had Mark Jordan and Amy Scott, and but when I saw that show, actually Juno's show, that wasn't for me. Yeah, and there's 2 Junos. There's the Junos you're not going to see because they give the awards out before, and then there's the show. So what do you make of that? You know,
that's, one time I saw Tom Power interview a guy named Daniel Caesar, who's like an R&B artist, or I think that's how he would, and I remember Tom asked him, "What's your favorite Juno memory?" And he said, "Well, I've actually never seen the Junos before." But I had this revelation, like, why would he have watched the Junos, because he never would have seen himself in that equation, and because sometimes I was starting to feel sad that I watched the Junos and I don't see myself in that equation anymore. But for the longest time, it was, you know what I mean? It was like Lightfoot and all these people that
Sure.
that kind of music makes sense to me. But I'm a almost 60-year-old white guy from Canada, you know, and it never occurred to me before that there were people that felt excluded, and it probably should have occurred to me, but that was like a real lightning rod moment. And so now when I see the Junos, and you're right, I think that it's not for me, that kind of music. I don't relate to it, and it's things times, you know, it's a different, you know, we're in a different time period now, there's been a cultural shift, and I feel, you know, I think many of us feel a little bit left behind, and that's maybe as it should be. I mean,
would
you know, you won't see,
would that be, would you be feeling outdated and antiquated?
exactly, yeah. But I felt like that even when I first came out. I mean, you know, the music I was making in 1995
Exactly.
was considered old hat, and
Yes.
because, you know, I'm just a product like everyone else of my influences and the music I heard growing up, and that's what I try to do. And no, but you're right. I watch the Grammys, and sometimes, you know, you mentioned Bonnie Raitt. Like there's someone who, you know, I mean, there's so much talent there at the source.
A voice and a guitar. A voice
and a guitar. And she doesn't need to have these sort of, I don't know what you call it. It's almost like Broadway where there's costumes and
gymnastics.
I don't, it's like watching, I did a tweet about it actually, because sometimes I watch Saturday Night Live and I don't know who any of the musical artists are. Again, I'm old. And then I don't know what they're doing, because I used to I like seeing people play live. And when I was a kid, I'd watch Saturday Night Live and I'd see Ry Cooder, or I'd see, you know, the Kinks or something. And that was exciting to me. But again, I'm an old guy, and I don't really, it's probably only natural that a lot of this stuff would sort of go over my head, you know, and it's probably as it should be, I guess.
I just have a dream that there should be the Junos, and then there should be the other Junos. And
you know, like Coke, like have Coke and classic Coke.
Exactly. And I'd like to help produce that. Because I like all of you all.
Yeah.
I went on a rant after the Juno couch and said, where's Ron Sexsmith? Where's Art Bergman? Where are the people that sometimes get in between these genres and make great music, and we find them? Where are they represented here? But then I realized, I stopped myself and said, well, because maybe they didn't put out a release in the qualifying year. However,
well, you know, I've had 3 albums out since the last time I was nominated. Yeah. So it's very possible that my days of being nominated are just, you know,
why don't you just give up?
I should just give up. You know, I mean, it's silly, because none of us do these. None of us make music. At least no one I know makes music for awards, right? It's nice to get one. It's nice to be invited to the party or to the ball. And there was a whole period of time where I was going to the Junos. Sorry, my chair's squeaking. Almost every year, or every other year. And I've won 3, and I've been nominated, I think, 15 times. So I really have nothing to complain about. But yeah, you still get a little sad if you put an album out and, you know, it just doesn't get any sort of notice.
Okay, but so let me stop you there. Hold on a second, because it plays right into this quote at the bottom of the page. It says, I think it's from American Songwriter, the magazine, or the website. He makes masterpiece music that gets played and then fades. Like that's unusual. That happens with every artist that goes through. Very few stay. Pink Floyd. Maybe it's the mix of his voice and the music. He's similar to Ray Davies from the Kinks, Colin Blunstone from the Zombies, and Brian Wilson. I just wasn't made for these times. I've seen you post your albums. You always do albums just over your shoulder. I've seen Ray Davies. I've seen the Kinks. I've seen the Zombies. I'm certain I've seen Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys and Pet Sounds, I think it was. So do they all inform what you do and as you songwrite and sing?
Oh yeah. You know, I mean, as a kid of the 60s, I was born in 64, and I grew up in early 70s. You know, it was a very melodic period of music. There was I think it was Maclean's magazine once did an article about me called Melody's Child. And I kind of thought that was nice because I do feel like I'm a child of melody. And all these people, like you mentioned, Ray Davies and Brian Wilson, I just sort of soaked it all in, you know. I mean, it was like it's in my DNA now. Where when I'm writing songs, I'm not thinking about Brian Wilson or anyone, but obviously, it's in there. But for me, I think I'm kind of like a hybrid between all that stuff, and the British Asian music that I love, and all the Canadian folkies that I love,
Sure.
like Lightfoot and Leonard and Joni. So somewhere in the midst of all that is what I think is my sound.
Your sound, that's my sound, man.
Yeah.
And we'll get to Leonard in a second. I wrote this question down. Sometimes it translates, sometimes it doesn't. What albums, just a couple,
okay,
that had a profound effect on you and your music that stay with you now?
Oh, okay. I'll just name a couple, but it's one of those questions that you have to kind of readjust every 5 years or so because there'll be another album that comes along.
But there's a couple that stay through thick and thin that have to be there.
Yeah, I think I'd have to say, again, getting back to the Kinks. I heard the Kinks on the radio when I was about 14. It was all day and all the night, just on the radio.
Of course.
And I never heard it before, and I was like, and it felt like I was hearing it for the first time in '65 or something. So the next day I went to the record store, Sam the Record Man in St. Catharines, and I didn't know which one to buy, and so I bought this album called Golden Hour of the Kinks. It had like about 25 songs on it. And I saw that song All Day and All the Night was on one side, and You Really Got Me. And I said, oh, I know that song too. And I recognized a few of the titles.
Sure.
But the side one began with a song called Days. That is, if you're a Kinks fan, it wasn't a hit or anything, but it's one of those songs that everyone seems to love by the Kinks. And that changed my life, hearing that record, because I was already a fan of people like Elton John and the Beatles and stuff. But Ray Davies, for some reason, he was the one that made me think that maybe I could write songs. I don't know why. I related to him more than I did of Lennon and McCartney.
Wow.
Because Lennon and McCartney seemed like almost angels. They almost seemed, almost too cool. And McCartney was uber talented. Lennon was just beyond cool.
Yeah.
And I didn't think I could ever be that cool. But Ray Davies seemed slightly awkward to me. He had, a space between his teeth. He sang a bit flat. And I don't know, I just felt, I don't know, he sort of ignited that thing where I want to write songs.
Have you met Ray Davies?
Yeah, I've met him. I met him as a fan a bunch of times, but then in 2011, I had an album that did very well in the UK called Long Player, Late Bloomer. And I was invited to take part in the Meltdown Festival, this annual festival. And every year it's curated by different artists. Like one year it's David Bowie, or you know what I mean? And this particular year it was Ray Davies. So he asked me to come. And so when I got to Royal Festival Hall, he was there, and we decided we were going to sing a song together. So we sang this one called Misfits. And then a few days later, I was actually in his recording studio in London. We tried to do a version of it that's never seen the light of day. And then again, when he played Toronto about a year later, he had me come and sing it again. And that's just crazy, because, he's like a God to me in a way,
But you got a chance to tell him that, and you got a chance to work with him. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I told him that, but I think he was well aware that I was a big fan, and
Last one-off question. I'll get to the titles, I promise.
Yeah.
Is there a film character that you see yourself as?
Oh wow.
One.
Okay.
Yeah, that could be me up there.
Maybe the kid from Rushmore, that movie Rushmore. There's something about that guy that I related to, and I don't know exactly what, because he was a lot more industrious than I am, But I think there was a sort of an outsider feeling I got from watching. I mean, it's one of my favorite movies, and and it's a bit of a cliche, but I think a lot of us who do this for a living felt like that when we were growing up. They felt, like we were like the song Misfits. That's how I felt most of my life. So I still do that.
Thank you, Ron. Ron Sexsmith. The new album is The Vivian Line, which is that road. I've read this now. I think I've done my homework. That's a road, a through road between Toronto and Stratford.
Well, close. It's more of like it's a rural route that runs from Stratford it's a country road that dumps us off on the highway that takes us to Toronto and Kitchener, all those places. Yeah,
but it is the connection between you and Toronto, and it's the difference between where you are now and where you were. And by the way, just as an aside, Chris Waters, the Globe and Mail wine critic, sends along his love.
Wow!
Because you are the pride of St. Catharines. You and he are both from St. Catharines.
That's right.
So now, that road, that difference between Toronto, and you've told us some of the stories before about how lucky you were to get out of Toronto before COVID and find this wonderful spot, and then you had a chance to do a recording studio and do what you do during COVID, and it showed itself. But some of these songs, I get the feeling that maybe they've been around for a bit. What's the oldest song?
Oh, there is one that's been around. All the other songs are pretty new, but the one song, Diamond Wave, I wrote in 1988.
Why is that song? It's maybe the best song on the album. Why was it run to the litter?
Well, it was like I'd forgotten about it. I wrote it so long ago. And I think I even recorded a version in the 80s that sounds very dated now. It sounds very, very 80s, And what happened was when I was putting these songs together, I was playing it. Something, I was reminded of it. And I didn't even have to go back it just came right back to me, the lyrics and everything. And I was just playing it around the house. And my wife said, "Hey, what's that? That sounds pretty good." And so when I went around to demo these new songs, I just stuck it on there to see if my producer would like it. And so it's just weird. I forgot about it. And then it's like a lot of things. I made, this is my 17th album. So generally I was always more excited about the brand new songs. And I think there's other songs that are almost at least as old that never got on an album.
I love that song. It's the hot hit. It's the hot AC hit from the album.
It's getting a lot of airplay overseas anyway. I don't know about here.
It's getting played at CKUA. By the way, soon, even with this album might put it over the top and you'll be number one at CKUA.
I would love that.
And you can
I've
just
never been number one anywhere. I've never been number one anywhere. That'd be great. I'd love that. So.
Okay, I'll let you know. Place called Love.
Yeah.
Here's the conundrum, and I've explained this before. Rather than me imposing what I think songs are about, I try to get out of the way and let the artist, the songwriter who lived it or imagined it, tell me. But there's a couple of things that Place Called Love. Oh man, it sounds like other songs that I've heard, and yet it's its own song.
Yeah, well, I think that's true. It's funny with me because that element of familiarity is I kind of strive for that. Almost every song I've ever written, I want it to feel like it's been around. It's weird, and that's usually what tells me I'm on the right track.
Yes.
If I'm playing something that, and I don't run away from cliches. I run to them. I think I don't want to go miles out of my way to say something simple and this and that. But so oftentimes I'll be working on a melody and I'll think, well, that reminds me of something, but I can never quite put my finger on what it is. I think that's a good thing.
Here's a question I've never asked before. Thousands of interviews. Yeah. First question: what's your favorite chord?
Oh wow! I would have to say I like because I use a capo a lot. I go up and down. It's a bit of a cheater really, but I use the capo a lot, and I love playing things in a D position because you can do D in different places up the neck, and it almost sounds like at times like you're using like an open tuning or something. So
what's the best example of it here on the album?
Let me think. Well, that song is written in a D formation. I use capo third fret and then play it in a D.
Okay, now you've lost me.
Yeah.
I hear you guys. I hear you guys talk about guitars and music and stuff, and it's like
Yeah.
Polish.
Yeah, well, it's just like, I try when I write a song, I try it in about 4 or 5 different keys, right? Just to see which one suits my voice. Sometimes I try it on piano, guitar, because it all changes depending on what, you know, yeah, you could pick up the tempo or slow it down. But that song, it was the last song I wrote for the album, and I don't know, the producer when he heard it, he thought it was a nice sentiment, and he thought that would be a nice way to open up the record,
Okay.
and because I think everyone's had such a hard time, and that's what the song's about. This feeling like after all the struggles over, there's hopefully some peace that comes.
Ron Sexsmith, and we've come to this point in the interview, Ron, that there's no time for answers, only questions.
Okay.
Okay. What I had in mind is you in school.
That's in my school days, yes. Yeah.
And trying to fit in.
Yeah, not trying to fit in, but also just really falling behind, and just they didn't know what to do with me. They actually put me back into a slow grade in grade 4.
Yeah.
And then they put me up into a grade 5 creative writing grade because I wasn't paying attention, and they knew something was going on in my head, and they wanted me to see what would come out. I remember writing our classroom Christmas play that year, and all this stuff. So I thought that was an interesting thing to do, and I think I was sort of borderline Asperger's even, but they didn't quite have a word for it then,
Were you a happy kid?
Yeah. Although everyone kept asking me what's the matter, because I had a sad face. I had a very sad face, but obviously I wasn't happy when I was in school. I mean, like a lot of kids, you're looking out the window and it's a sunny day, and then, then you turn and it's all these facts and figures on the chalkboard.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up, my mom raised me and my brothers. We didn't have a dad until I was 9.
Yeah.
But we had a happy life, and we knew we had a lot of kids on our street. So.
How old were you when you realized that music and writing music was a way out, a way to find yourself?
Well, I think like really early, like 2 even or 3, because probably more like 3, because my dad left when I was 2, and he left his records. We probably talked about this before, but so my mom let me play them. There were 45s, and and I always felt that was a pivotal moment for me, because a lot of parents wouldn't let your kid play,
Sure.
touch the vinyl. And I would just play these songs, and there was a lot of doo-wop and Buddy Holly and country and stuff, and it sounded like it. I didn't even know what I mean, what year it didn't matter what year they were from or anything. It made my life feel less lonely, And
How old were you?
Like I say, 3 going on 4.
Wow.
And you got to remember too, this is probably 67-ish. The songs on the radio at that time were, you're a kid and you hear Nowhere Man on the radio.
Yeah.
And it blows your mind, because you're like, what? It's such a thought-provoking concept. Nowhere. He's a real nowhere man. And it's not like where I find there's not a lot of nutrition in today's pop music. Like, I don't hear anybody saying anything, like saying anything that
Except themselves.
Yeah, I mean, when you're a kid, sometimes the song would go over your head because you're a kid, but you just like the words or whatever. But, I don't know. It's hard to talk about it without sounding like an old person. But the music I heard on the radio changed my life, and the records that my parents had, I loved everything. I was at that age where, I would put on Engelbert Humperdinck, and then I would put on a, like a Beatles record or something. It didn't matter to me. I just wanted to hear what people were doing. And
okay. Ever Wonder is the last track on the album. Last tracks are always very special to me. What is it about that song, and why did it choose to be the closer?
Well, before I wrote Place Called Love, that was going to be the opening track, because it was the first song that I wrote for the album. And it's funny because originally I thought it almost had a Beach Boy vibe to it, like Wouldn't It Be Nice or something. But when we got into the studio, it kind of took on this Roger Miller King of the Road thing with clicks and upright bass. But I wanted to end, the last line of the album, the last line of that song goes, "How is it kindness can still be seen over the blindness? Ever wonder about that?" Because I wanted to put people to bed with a sort of a happy thought that there's still kindness out there and there's still people who care. And so that's why I think it makes for a better closing number than an opening.
I got my titles confused, Ron. Flower Boxes is about loss, but it's it's about a legacy, because you can see what's left behind, right?
Yeah.
Who was that person?
He was I don't want to, diminish his role, but he was like our handyman. When we first moved to when we first moved to Stratford, we have an old farmhouse.
You needed a handyman.
Yeah, and I'm not handy, and there were things that we wanted. We wanted a fence, and we wanted to turn our attic into a bedroom and stuff. And this guy we met through a friend, we would just call him, and he'd be over, always very cheerful.
That's fantastic, because we did the same thing.
The sad thing about it is we had this guy. We felt so lucky to have met this guy, and then he died unexpectedly. I guess it would have been 2019, just on one of the country roads driving to work. And he had young kids. It was just really sad, and it was really sad for us because he was almost like an angel in a way, because he would just come, and he was affordable, and he worked fast. And, and my wife would always take pictures of him working and to document the progress on the house and that.
Fantastic.
And so after he died, she made a photo album for his wife. And that's where the song comes from, because Colleen asked me if I could write a little poem in the beginning to put at the beginning of the book.
Yeah.
So I wrote Flower Boxes. But it wasn't until like, a year or so later that I put music to it.
What was his first name?
Jason.
One more and I'll let you go. Maybe. When you walk out on stage in Portland tonight, and you're a long way from home.
Okay.
When you sing "When Our Love Was New," will that take you back? Will that be your friend on the road?
It's funny, when I first started to perform that song live, which just was on this recent tour, and I would get choked up singing it, So I finally got past that, I think. But that song means a lot to me because, Colleen and I have been together now over 20 years, and we've had some rough patches, and then we've sort of ended up in this really happy situation. But you also are aware of the passing of time, where it's kind of a wistful song. And, but yeah, it's a very romantic song too. It's almost like, I wrote a song called "Wasting Time" on my first album. It's, which is like at the beginning of something. And this feels more like, not the end of something, but it feels like, we've accumulated all these memories and experiences together. And, so that's what it's about.
Here's your last two, I promise.
Yeah, no worry. Yeah.
Do you write to your voice or your heart?
Oh, to my heart, I guess. I hadn't really thought of it that way, but because sometimes I'll write a song and I may not feel like I'm the right person to sing it. Like even on this record, there's a song called "This, That, and the Other Thing." Yeah. Which I was written for somebody like Smokey Robinson to sing, and I don't have that kind of voice, but I tried.
I love the riff.
It's a funky song, and
I love the harmonies that come in there, and I love it's light and sunny. It lifts your soul.
Yeah, and that's when I thought that one could be a single, but so far no one at the label has felt that way. But so I don't really think about write with my voice in mind, but I sometimes I'll write with another singer in mind. Like I've written songs for, I wrote a song for Diana Krall one time, or I wrote some for Bing Crosby, actually, who's been dead since the 70s. But sometimes I'll write a song with him in mind, which is crazy. But
what's the best Ron Sexsmith cover?
Cover? Oh, wow. You mean that I do live or that I've recorded on a
No,
tribute
that's been recorded. One of your songs has been re-recorded.
Oh, I see. I really like Leslie Feist's version of "Secret Heart," because she's the only one who, well, she did it in a way that, like almost a Europop way, like whereas most people like Rod Stewart did it pretty faithfully to my version. She did a kind of, when I first heard it, I thought it was Ace of Base or someone like that. You know, I didn't know who it was. I also really love Emmylou Harris's version of Hard Bargain, which was so unexpected because that just came out of the blue. I didn't know if she was even going to do it. So,
well. Once again, the wheel turns and you're on the road. You're carrying your heart with you on stage in these songs. You're representing all of us. You really are.
Thank you.
And you've carved out a life, for Pete's sake. You could have been laying pipe somewhere. You could have been a rebar. You know, you could have been a chef. No, maybe not.
No, I couldn't have been a chef. I probably would still be a courier, I think, is what would have happened, because that's what I was doing before I got signed.
And you would have been a great courier.
I was a good courier, I must say. It really was.
Did you lose any packages?
Once. And actually, to bring it back around to Diamond Wave, I wrote that song because I lost a package and I was going to be fired. And on my birthday in January 88, I went down to the office to plead my case and hopefully not lose my job. And they decided to give me a second chance. And just as I was leaving, I said, oh, by the way, it's my birthday today. And you know, and then, you know, they were kind of looking at me like, well, lucky day for you or something. And I went home and I wrote the whole song, Diamond Wave, on my way home on the streetcar and then on the subway and all that. And by the time I got home, I had it all finished. So anyway, it's a little serendipity.
And then how many years did it take to actually come to light?
Well, we recorded it in 2021, so that was, I don't know, do the math. I might have so bad.
It's just a great song. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your life. I hope you come. I know you're close. You're in Portland. You're just down there, but I'm on Vancouver Island. Get yourself over. Are you doing any festivals this summer?
Good question. I not at the moment, but I keep asking my manager, why don't the festivals ever have me? So I hope to play some.
Come on.
Yeah, I know. I should be playing them. I'll look into it. So, but it's really nice to talk to you. You know, you were my first Zoom, right?
Really?
Back when the pandemic first started.
Really?
Yeah. I remember not sure if it was going to work or what, you know. So now it's like old hat. But no, you were my first. So.
By the way, did any of these songs get conceived and recorded on Richard Manuel's bench?
You know, not conceived or recorded, but I use his bench to sometimes I'll sit and think about a song I'm working on and to get a little further with it. So I'm sure one of these was developed on Richard Manuel's bench, I think. Yeah.
Thank you, Ron.
Thanks, Terry. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Careful.
Let's do it again sometime.
Thank you. As soon as possible.
All right.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers. Bye. Take care. Bye.
Ron Sexsmith on the Mulligan Stew podcast. The album is The Vivian Line. It's his 17th. You're going to love it. The video version of the interview can be found on the Terry David Mulligan YouTube channel. Have a look at Ron. The body language, just the kind of person that he is. You get a sense of why you like his music so much, because he's such a wonderful human being. He's a wonderful person. Anyway, Ron Sexsmith. Next week, it's A.C. Newman, Carl Newman, from the New Pornographers. Talking to us from his home in Woodstock. They have a brand new album coming out. We'll tell you all about it. And then just down the road, because we just lost Red Robinson, the first and last rock and roll DJ in Canada was Red Robinson. He just passed away. And we're going to remember him on the West Coast. And I apparently have the last two interviews with Red, video and audio. And I'm going to be editing those for this podcast and for the YouTube channel and for the Stew on CKUA. Please subscribe, Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Appreciate it. Happy Easter.